We formed the Fusion Syndicate shortly after ChatGPT came out, and as communications and marketing professionals, we recognized that generative AI was either going to empower us or run us over. And so we made it our business to try to get as smart as we could about this emerging technology. And what we're going to talk about today is how generative AI and large language models, these things like ChatGPT and Claude 2 and Google Bard and Bing Chat, are much more than just search on steroids. And it's not just about communications and marketing, although that's our area of expertise. This is really about anything that has to do with content development or content analysis. So if you're in engineering or HR or finance or any other business function that deals with content in any way, think of what we're going to talk about in terms of marketing as a metaphor. So, James, I think that you had approached us and asked us to help you with something. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Howard and I are trying to come up with a great killer, thought leadership topic. And it struck us, particularly because this was, after the unfortunate passing of Gordon Moore, that we needed to find a way of memorializing Gordon's accomplishments in the context of the technology that he helped pioneer. And so I put together what was kind of an academic piece about information technology. And Howard contributed a lot, but it was still kind of dry and a little bit boring. I said, "Hey, Dan, you've been playing around with Gen AI. Can you make this thing sizzle? Because Jesus, this is like reading this is like watching paint dry." So Dan, that's what I asked you. That was the problem that I presented to you, and you said, "Yeah, let me go off of the team and let me figure out what we can do with this thing to make this thing sing a little bit better than it does." And so Dan, take it away.
So, having that raw content gave me the confidence to know that, oh, I can take that and use that with, in this case, Claude 2, which you're seeing on the screen now. This is the welcome screen to Michael, who's actually running the things behind the scenes here. So we had a prompt that we wrote, and it has built into it a series of questions that it asks the user to be able to really target the end written deliverable to be much more compelling to the audience than something that you would just normally write as an essay. And it has a lot of other things built into it to guide a conversation with a knowledgeable user to collaborate and build the final piece together. And so we loaded that prompt, which is about 500 words, into the input field. And this is what we got as a response, Claude 2 saying thank you for the detailed instructions and then asking that first question, which is who's the intended audience? And the intended audience is all of you. And this is how we characterized you, as you can see. And then part of the prompt is to play back the understanding of each answer to make sure that there's alignment. Because one of the problems we've discovered as we've worked with these large language models, these chatbots, is sometimes they kind of go off in their own direction. And so there's little tricks we've learned to sort of keep things aligned, and that's one of them. So it summarizes its understanding, which is right from the previous answer. Ask the next question, what's the topic? We tell it the topic. It summarizes its understanding correctly again of that one. Asks the next question about the purpose of the piece. And here we gave it a more complicated answer. So we gave it a bigger scope than the original piece. So it summarized its understanding correctly. Asked the next question about what style to use. We chose narrative, but we didn't want it to be like a once upon a time bedtime story. So it understood that and it asked, okay, what kind of format? Should this be like a movie script or a blog post? No, a journal article format. And what length? About 1,500 to 2,000 words, which is about 3 times longer than what the original raw content was. So it understood that, and then it said, do you have any additional context? So this is our opportunity to load in that raw content. And because we're using Claude 2, it has the ability to take in Word documents and PDF documents, up to 5 of them with up to 10 megabytes each. So that's a lot of capacity. So we took advantage of that capability to load in this Word document. And it understood everything we told it up until that point and asked the next question, is there a particular voice or style of writing? We thought, well, since this is an Intel audience and a lot of Intel alums who worked with Andy Grove, let's use Andy Grove's voice from 2 of his most famous books. So that's what we told it, and it understood. And then it asked, do we have a specific call to action? You know, in marketing, you always want to end something with a call to action where people can either learn more or where they can buy something. Again, that's not typically in an academic essay like what we had from James and Howard. So we gave it the call to action. Now, I'm going to skip through a few steps here because it went through an outlining process where we could do adds, moves, and changes to the outline to really control the flow and all that. So after going through that and approving the outline, we then told it to go ahead and generate the draft, and this is what it generated. So in other words, to recap, we started with a good quality piece of raw content. We took a prompt that we had written called the all-purpose writer that puts guardrails and structure around the collaboration with the AI chatbot, Claude 2 in this case. And then we got in minutes a draft that was not the finished product. It was about 80% there. It had to be reviewed and approved by James and Howard. And there's no pictures yet in here. And so we had to, do a little bit more work. But anyone with our all-purpose writer prompt and a good piece of raw content could have done exactly what we did and gotten to this 80% point in about 5 minutes. So what's the next point? This is what we ended up with as our 95% deliverable. It still needs to be, put online, distributed, and so forth. But one of the things that occurred to us is we could ask Claude 2 to give us captions for each section in the draft because Claude 2 is text only. It can't give us the pictures. But with the captions, because it knows what it wrote, it's going to give us good captions. We can put those into something like Google Images, and that's what we did. And we got these, and it also made it easy to credit those images because Google Images gives you the sources. And so that was a human oversight function. And the point here is that you don't just delegate work to an AI tool and get a finished product. You need human insight and human oversight. So, James, we delivered this to you, I think, a couple hours after you sent that request.
Yeah.
Uh, what what kind of conclusions did you draw from
Well,
that?
well, first off, it was wow. I was blown away. But this tool really kind of highlights for me a problem that all of us marketers have had to struggle with is we're in a fiercely competitive environment. We're always being beat up because we're a cost center and we get burned out about being told to do more with less. So the goal is utilizing these tools, is figuring out how to empower your marketing teams, and if you're running your own consulting marketing shop, how you're going to utilize these tools in the most effective way to tackle some of the biggest problems within marketing. And then finally, you just got to recognize that the solution here truly is a combination of both you and the tools.
So what we're going to do is use marketing as a proof point. And if you're not in marketing and you're dealing with content in other ways, as I said earlier, you can do the same things here. So we're going to give you some content creation tips that go along with the branding and messaging aspects of marketing, because that's such a natural connection. And then we're also going to spend a little bit of time on preparing your team, you as a leader, how you can prepare your team and the culture of your organization, and also bring in the ethical governance that is so necessary because, with great power comes great responsibility. There's a lot of myths about AI. I think the biggest one is it's going to take away our jobs. And I think, like with any major technology discontinuity we've seen with PCs and with the World Wide Web and so on, uh, you either embrace it or it does run over you. And so the point is we need to embrace it responsibly, and it will give us superpowers. The next myth is that it's going to take away our privacy. And the good news is the major platforms, the ChatGPT, the Claude 2, Google Bard, all these major platforms are anonymizing and aggregating data because there's a lot of regulation already in place in the EU and emerging in the United States and even China, that's going to cost these companies many billions of dollars if they don't. And the third myth is that AI is going to make all these decisions and we're all going to become slaves. And at least at this point, the human is always in the loop. And again, there's a lot of regulation and a lot of AI safety work going on, hopefully to keep it that way. But it's definitely that way today. Now let's talk about branding and messaging as the key example here. And, when we talk about branding, we're not just talking about a logo. We're talking about the thing that differentiates your organization from all competitors, the unique promise that you can make based on the needs of your target market and the unique capabilities and resources of your organization. And there are AI tools that can help you figure that out by going through lots of data on the web, looking at lots of interactions with social media that you and your competitors have put out there to find that opportunity that differentiates you, and then activating that. Once you articulate that promise with the help of AI, and the human users, of course, choosing among the options, then figuring out ways to implement that across advertising and PR and events and all the other media mix. And AI can help you build lots of different ways to do that. In addition, PR and social media, earned media, AI tools can generate the actual copy for you, the story pitches, all in alignment with that brand promise and those earlier deliverables from this whole branding and messaging process. Now, one of the things that happens at this stage is lots of content development. So how do you go about that? What kind of workflows involving these AI tools can you use? Well, knowing about the four main chatbot platforms that we've all heard about, starting with Google Bard, it's especially good for learning about new things. This is an example. I don't expect you to read this tiny font, but what I wanted to show you here is that with the simple question of what is AI-assisted marketing, we got all of this in response. What we got was an opening paragraph that told us what AI-assisted marketing was, and then three bullets telling us how it can help businesses, and then five bullets giving us examples of different kinds of AI-assisted marketing, and then a closing giving us some ideas on next steps to learn more. So that becomes really great raw content, similar to the raw content that James and Howard gave us in that Word document that we loaded into Claude 2, similar to what you see on this slide. I could just as easily have copied and pasted that output from Google Bard and put that into the same input field here to create a blog post about AI-assisted marketing, for example. But what's so great about Claude 2 then is that not only can you put in these Word documents and PDFs in addition to copying and pasting directly from online, but it really is good at the conversational aspect of working with users. Now, Bing Chat has a whole other value proposition. Because it is directly connected to the web, what it's really good for is finding sources and citations for facts and statements that you've written or that others have written that you want to fact check. And so what you see here in its interface in the upper right in that dark green is a couple of paragraphs I just wrote speculating about climate change. And I was curious if that was really true or not. So I loaded it into Bing Chat with that prompt that says insert citations in this text. You see in the orange at the top there. And sure enough, it gave me a bunch of citations. You can see in the first and second paragraph, those little numbers there are footnotes that correspond to the learn more links that you see at the end. So that's really powerful and for professional writers who want to put links into their articles to cite their sources. Now, what if you want to write prompts yourself? What you prompt is what you get. Garbage in is garbage out, not only for data, but also the prompt, which sets up the process to work with that data. So there's 4 tips that we can give you to write better prompts. One of those tips is to clearly define your purpose before you even start thinking about writing the prompt. Once you figure that out and you start writing your prompt, stay away from jargon and stay away from complex language. Perhaps the most powerful tip is to provide context, and there are multiple types of context. Factual context, like the number of client endpoints that Intel IT manages, can be useful if you're writing an article about that. But style and tone context are also very important. When we told Claude 2 to write that article in the style of Andy Grove's High Output Management or Only the Paranoid Survive, that's an example of style or tone context. Now, I'm going to demonstrate another prompt for you that uses a different kind of context that we're showing here on the screen now, which is a detailed example of what we mean by something that we want the prompt to work with the chatbot to evaluate. So in a proofreader, you want to look at things like spelling, punctuation, grammar, syntax, and style. And then the final fourth tip is to test and refine. The proofreader prompt that we're going to show you, which is just as big and involved as that all-purpose writer prompt that we demonstrated a moment ago, is somewhere in the neighborhood of, I don't know, 600 words. It takes a lot of testing and refinement to make it work properly. So here is that that proofreader prompt. What we started with was some original text. We threw it in with the prompt. The prompt analyzed it and gave us a paragraph by paragraph analysis of all the violations in spelling, punctuation, syntax, grammar, and so forth. And we can zoom in and look at the syntax violation on paragraph 3. And then it goes on to rewrite the entire original draft with correct spelling, punctuation, grammar, syntax, and style. With a prompt like this, you can leverage your great ideas and no longer feel insecure about the correctness of how you write. So we think that's a really powerful prompt. But it's not just about text. Images are very important. I write a lot of blog posts, and I always used to worry about finding the right image to go along with what I wrote, and are there copyright issues that I have to work around, and oh, this is going to take a long time. Well, now with these prompt-driven image creators like Bing Image Creator, you can quickly and easily make high-quality images that are tailored to your needs. And if you look at the left-hand channel, you see those 4 variations of the Simpsons eating at a restaurant. That was created by my son Josh, my 40-year-old son, the first time he ever encountered Bing Image Creator. And he wrote this 2-paragraph prompt. You can see a piece of it at the upper part of that. Uh, and that's what he got. And with no training and no knowledge about this, so that's pretty amazing. Now, if you're a professional artist and you'd like some knobs and dials to really do some professional art, then you can go to Midjourney or Stable Diffusion, or you could go to Playground AI, which puts an interface on top of those and lets you do up to 1,000 images a day for free. And I use that quite a bit. So there's more to marketing, of course, than content generation. The reason we're generating all this content usually is to build awareness or to generate leads. And where marketing and sales overlap is with the lead generation and lead management and lead nurturing. And there's great AI tools out there. There's also prompts we've written, but there's ready-made AI tools that you can get from other companies that will help you optimize your media buying for advertising, which is critical for lead generation because you got to spend money to make money. There's other specialized AI tools for event management and other AI tools that help you do lead scoring. So, for example, if you're lead scoring and you find the most qualified leads and you want to set up buyer meets seller opportunities at in-person events, you can use AI tools to help you optimize that entire process. And then there are AI tools that can help you analyze the sales data to see what worked and what didn't for your continuous improvement. But all along the way, we're talking about collaborative intelligence, and certainly in sales, the human relationships are the key. So we certainly don't want to imply that AI takes over from the human user here. And that gets to a key point about culture. Andy Grove is famous for saying there are 2 kinds of companies, the quick and the dead. Clearly, that applies to AI because we're now talking about another intelligence. We're not just connecting ourselves to each other in various ways. So this is powerful. And leaders of teams need to make sure that the frontline folks who are working with customers become the AI whisperers and don't feel threatened by the change. But there's a lot of leadership needed to prepare the organization for that mindset. In addition, ethical governance is critical. And so there's 3 key areas that we advocate in ethical AI governance. The first is oversight. That has to do with assessing the impact that AI is going to have throughout your organization and with your customers and with your supply chain. And that's also why user control is so critical, that users must always be able to opt in and opt out, that the machine is never our overlord. And that's kind of an AI principle. But perhaps the most important AI principle is limit your data collection to only the data you need when you need it. And then validate the outputs in terms of accuracy and bias in particular. Transparency applies both to content and process. The content you made, you see that little lowercase b toward the bottom of the slide? That shows that the image behind the text was made by Bing Image Creator. That's a watermark. That's an example of transparency in the content. And monitoring for bias and inaccuracy, we keep talking about that because those are the two problems that keep coming up and that you can get sued for. Now, cultivating an ethical culture, Intel and many other companies have always been proud of their ethical cultures, but with AI, it's a time to reassess and reevaluate. So AI amplifies our human skills. We've talked about marketing as a metaphor. There's a lot more we could have talked about with market research, sales, and customer service, and many other areas. But the key point is that it's collaborative intelligence, it's human insight and human oversight that's really driving the AI productivity. So we're talking about efficiency, effectiveness, and quality, and really a step change in improvement in those elements that make up our productivity.
Thanks, guys. Thanks to all of my Intel alumni friends out there. Bye bye.